Alright guys, welcome to the next lesson. So in this one, we are going to create our first design. And we're going to start simple, we're going to create a little box. So to do that, as we learned the last lesson, let's start by hitting create sketch. Let's hit that, and let's select the ground plane to create our sketch. And let's again grab a rectangle by clicking right here. And now we don't want a 2-point rectangle, we want a center point rectangle. So if you go down here to the sketch palette, you can also click the different type of rectangles you can make. So let's click the center point rectangle right here. Let's click that, and that's first going to ask us for a center point. And let's place that in the origin, which is this point right here. Let's click that and let's drag that out. And instead of clicking somewhere, which you can do, we can also type in the exact value we want this to be. So let's type here for this first value, let's make that 100. And let's hit tab to go to the second value and make that 200. There we go. And now we can hit enter and that will create that for us. And by the way, I'm working in millimeters, and you can change that if you go up here to document settings. If you click on this drop down, it says units millimeters, and you can click right here to change that. And even if you do prefer working in inches, it might be useful for you to also use millimeters just to follow along with this course. So I'll leave that setting on millimeters. Let's hit cancel. And now we have this rectangle, and that's actually all we need for this first sketch. So let's hit finish sketch. And we can already extrude this. So let's hit extrude. And let's select that part, and we can drag that upwards. But let's give that a height of 100 as well by typing it. And let's hit enter. Now so far, this is just a solid brick. So this is not a box that we can put anything in. But there is actually a really easy way to modify this into a box. And for that we can use the shell tool, which you can find up here under modify. Right here it says shell. Let's click that. And now it's first going to ask us to select a face. And the face we select is going to be the face that's going to remain open. So this top part here, I want to be open in my box. So I'm going to click it. And now it's going to ask us to tell it how thick the sides are going to be. So let's make those sides 5 millimeters. So let's type in 5. And as you can see here, that gives us a perfect box with sides of 5 millimeters. And the bottom right here is also going to be 5 millimeters thick all the way through. So that's all for now. Let's hit OK. And this is already a box done. So it's really easy, but I actually want to make this box look a little bit more interesting. So I want to make sections within this box. So I want to divide this up into 3 equal sections. So to make that, let's go back into that first sketch. And we can actually go back by going up here in the sketch and double clicking it. Or if we hit finish sketch for a second, we can also right mouse click it and click edit sketch. There we go. And now let's make some lines right along here that are going to be 1/3 removed from this side. So let's first grab a line tool and let's click that right there. And let's move that downwards. So let's click that. You can see right there, it says 90 degrees. So let's click. There we go. That's the first line. And now we need another line 5 millimeters from there, because this is also going to be the thickness of the sides. So let's grab another line and let's place that right around there. And let's drag that downwards, make sure it's vertical, and let's click. And now we want to set the distance between these lines to be 5 millimeters. And right here, you can see this dimension. And we can actually also add these dimensions to the sketch once we've already created sketch geometry. And to do that, we can go up here to create. And all the way at the bottom, it says sketch dimension. But I'm probably going to keep calling them smart dimensions because I'm used to that from SolidWorks. So let's click this. And right now we can click sketch geometry and give it a dimension. So we can click this line to give it a dimension, but we can also click this line with it to set the dimension between those two pieces of sketch geometry. So let's click here and let's type in 5 because we want it to be 5 millimeters, and let's hit enter. There we go. And now we want the distance from this line to this line by clicking both to be such that it is on 1/3. And that's going to be roughly at about 65 millimeters. So let's write 65 and hit enter. And there we go, that's roughly 1/3, not exactly because we have these 5mm edges on both sides and this is also 5mm, but it will do for now. So that's going to be it for here. Let's hit finish sketch. And now this sketch that we just created is not visible because we already used it for one extrude and Fusion is going to think we don't need it anymore. But we can just reselect the visibility by clicking the eye next to it. And now we can deselect the visibility of this first body so that we can actually select this piece that we want to extrude. So let's hit extrude and let's select the profile in between those lines that we just made. So let's click that. And now let's reselect the visibility of the bodies. And we want this to come up all the way to the top here. So we can type in 100. And that will get the job done. But let's deselect it for now. Let's type in 0. And in the extrude panel right here, under extend type, it now says distance. But we can actually change that to to object. So if we click that, it's going to ask us to select an object for it to extrude to. So we want this to extrude to the top here. So if you just click this top face right there, it's going to automatically extrude it to that extent, which is really powerful. And right now you see this is all red, and that it is red means that it's going to cut. And you can also see in the operation here, it's now set to cut. And that is because there's overlapping geometry. So in this extrude we are making, there is overlapping geometry with an existing body. So Fusion is automatically going to think we want this to cut, but we don't actually want it to cut, we want this to join together. So we can go in this operation and instead of cut, just click join. And that's going to give us exactly what we want. So let's hit OK. So that gave us this intersection right here. And now we have 2 sections to store stuff. But I actually want this one to be divided up equally so that we have 3 sections. And instead of doing this again, we can draw the 2 lines again and extrude it up again, do the same thing, but we can also mirror what we just did here over to the other side. So if we go up here and create, we can find this mirror function right here if we click it. And the mirror function is going to allow us to mirror multiple different types of things. So under type here, the default is faces. You can also mirror bodies. You can also mirror features and components. And this extrude that we just did is a feature. And that is what we want to mirror. So under type, let's select features. And the object, we cannot really select an extrude. So we can go down here in the timeline and select this extrude that we made. Because that is what we want to mirror. And then for the mirror plane, let's click that. We actually want a plane exactly in the center right here, so that it will mirror over exactly to where we want it. So luckily we have this origin right here in the center, because we use a center rectangle all the way at the beginning, so we can select this plane right here. Let's click that. And then for the compute option, typically you just have to try some different things to see which words. There's not really a rule to this. Sometimes optimized words, sometimes identical words. I already tested this ahead, so I know identical will work in this case. But typically if you mirror something, you'll just have to try one of these out and one of them will typically work. So let's select identical because I already know it works for this specific operation, and let's hit OK. And there we go. That's a box with the 2 intersections. Now the final thing I want to do is make these intersections look a little bit more interesting. So I want to make these upper edges here a little bit rounded. So to do that, we can create a new sketch. So let's hit create sketch. And let's deselect the visibility of this body. And let's select the side plane for now. Alright, so now we're in the side plane. We can reselect the visibility of the bodies. And what we actually want is to use this point and this point right here, so that we can make some geometry right here that we can then extrude to make this round. However, although it looks like I can click these points, if I actually were to grab a line tool, for example, I cannot actually select these points. If I click right here and create a line, if you zoom in, you can see it's not exactly on this point. And we cannot use these points right now because they are not technically in this sketch. So if we hit Ctrl Z to undo those lines, there we go. We can actually project these points into this sketch. And to do that, it's really easy. If you go up here to create, hit project include, project, we can now click some geometry and it's going to project that orthogonally into this sketch. So if I, for example, select this point right here, there, if I click it, it's going to project it right there into this purple point you see here, or it's red right now. And it's going to project it right there because our sketch is right here in the center. On this plane is where we made the sketch. So if I select a point right here, it's going to project that orthogonally into this plane, which places the point right there. But we don't want this point, so let's deselect that again. We want this point, so let's select it, and this point right here as well. And let's select that one as well. And let's hit OK. And we can now deselect the visibility of the bodies. And you can see that gave us this point, and those points are actually in this sketch right now, and we can actually use them. So let's use the view cube and click this left plane to go orthogonal again so that we can actually sketch. And let's first grab a line and connect these 2 points. So let's select that point, and that creates a line there. Let's hit escape to leave the line tool. And now I want some sort of arc to go down here to create that sort of round edge that I want. So if we go up here to create, we can click arc, and let's grab the 3-point arc. So the 3-point arc is going to ask us for the first point first, then it's going to ask us for the final point, and then it's going to ask us to define the shape of the arc. So let's just click something like that. That looks good. And then we can also hit D for smart dimensions. So if we go up here to create, the sketch dimension we used, it says D next to it. So if I hit D on my keyboard, that also gives me the smart dimension tool. And I can click this and define this radius. So it's really close to 70. So let's just type in a nice even round 70 and let's hit enter. And that's it for now. So let's hit finish sketch. And let's reselect the visibility of the bodies. There we go. And we can now actually use this piece of sketch geometry to cut those holes into these side pieces. So let's click extrude. Let's select this profile that we just made. And let's drag that out here. And you will notice right now, it's thinking it has to create a new body. But as soon as there's overlapping geometry, it knows it has to cut, which is really nice. And right now we only have this on one side, so we have to do it again on the other side. But actually in the extrude menu, if you go to direction, it says one side. You can also click two sides. And that's going to allow us to do it on both sides at the same time. So we can extrude at both sides of this profile right now. So that looks good for now. Let's hit OK. And there we go. Alright, so that is it for our first design. You could actually use this, put pens in, for example. Maybe you put your pens in one section, your whiteboard markers in another section, and your pencils in the final one. Now, if you did actually want to make this by 3D printing it, you could do so really easily through Fusion. So if you want to 3D print this box, you can just go to bodies right here. And here we have this body that we want to 3D print. So we can click the right mouse button and click Save as STL. So you don't have to look at all of these settings, you can just hit OK. And then you can save it to your desktop as an STL file, which you can then open on your 3D printing slicer software. So I'll hit cancel on that. So that is it for this lesson. I hope that's all clear and you were able to follow along, and I will see you in the next one.